My name is Elena Wardell, and I was 38 years old when my sister erased me from my grandmother's obituary and then invited me to the reading of the will like I was a stranger asking for leftovers. 6 days after Grandma Evelyn's funeral, I sat in Conference Room 3 at Hollis and Ibarra Estate Council with a black dress still smelling faintly like rain and church carpet. My sister Natalie looked across the table at me and said, "You don't get to show up at the end and call it love." My grandmother's house, her bank accounts, her old jewelry box, and a $3.2 million estate were sitting between us in a stack of cream-colored legal paper. On the funeral program, under grandchildren, Natalie's name was printed in dark blue ink, and mine was not there at all. In my purse, beside a folded tissue and Grandma's dented brass thimble, I had a sealed envelope I had not opened in front of anyone. I had one reason not to answer Natalie right away, and that reason had a signature on it. Before that afternoon was over, Natalie's face would go so white, her husband put a hand on her shoulder like he thought she might fall out of the chair. But if I tell you that part first, you will miss why I sat there so still while everyone in my family waited for me to break. Natalie had always been good at rooms. That was the simplest way I could explain her to people who did not know us. She knew where to stand at weddings. She knew how to hold a wine glass while looking wounded. She knew how to say something cruel in a voice soft enough that the person who repeated it sounded dramatic. At Grandma's funeral, she wore a navy dress with pearl buttons and greeted people at the church doors like she had personally arranged grief by seating chart. I arrived 12 minutes late because no one told me they had moved the service from 1 o'clock to 12:30. Tessa Monroe, my coworker, drove me because my hands had started shaking when I opened the funeral home website that morning and saw the time had changed. She waited in the parking lot with the engine running while I stood under the white overhang, reading the printed program someone had left on a small table beside a basket of mints. Evelyn Margaret Wardell. Beloved mother, grandmother, sister, friend. There were 3 photos on the inside fold. Grandma in her garden, Grandma at Christmas, Grandma holding Natalie's daughter when she was a baby. Under family, it listed my mother Diane, my father Frank, my sister Natalie, Natalie's husband Brian, their children, 2 cousins in Cincinnati, and an uncle who had not visited Grandma in 9 years. My name was missing. I looked at that blank place so long the funeral director came over and asked, very gently, "Mom, are you all right?" Before I could answer, Natalie appeared beside him. "She's fine," she said. "She's had a complicated relationship with the family." The funeral director looked from her to me. He was a thin man with silver glasses and a soft way of folding his hands. He did not say anything, but when Natalie turned away, he reached behind the table and gave me another program. "This one has fewer fingerprints," he said. That detail stayed with me. Not because it changed anything. It did not put my name back where it belonged. It did not make my mother turn around from the front pew and wave me over. It did not make Natalie stop whispering to Cousin Renee with her hand over her mouth. But it was the first decent thing anyone had done for me that day. And sometimes one small kindness can keep you from stepping into the parking lot and driving until the road stops looking familiar. I sat in the 3rd row from the back, behind a man I did not know who smelled like wintergreen gum. My mother glanced over once. Her eyes landed on me, then slid away, like I was a bill she did not want to open. Natalie spoke during the service. She talked about Grandma's hands, Grandma's faith, Grandma's famous peach preserves, Grandma's final years of needing the people who truly stayed. Her voice trembled at exactly the right places. I kept my hands folded over my purse. Inside it was the envelope Grandma had given me 6 months before she died. I had not opened it yet. I knew enough from my work not to open certain things too early. I spent my days at a regional credit union handling estate settlements. I froze accounts when someone died. I explained beneficiary forms to adult children who suddenly became experts in fairness. I checked death certificates, notarized affidavits, trust documents, payable on death designations, and the little boxes people forgot to initial. My family called it paperwork. They said I was good at forms, like they were describing someone who had learned a party trick. Natalie especially loved saying it. "Elena's the file girl," she would say, smiling. "Don't worry. If anyone needs a tab labeled, she's your woman." In conference room 3, 6 days after the funeral, she made that same little smile. There were 11 people at the table. Natalie had made sure of that. My parents, Natalie's husband, Uncle Theo, cousin Renee and her husband, Grandma's church friend, Mrs. Whitaker, a neighbor I knew Natalie barely recognized, me, Natalie, and Marisol Ibarra, the estate attorney, sitting at the head of the table with a closed binder in front of her. Natalie had a folder too. Hers was black, glossy, and already open. I saw the corner of a signed page before she covered it with her hand. I did not understand yet how much that signature would matter. Welcome back to the Madeline Files, where quiet people tell the part of the story everyone else edited out. If you have ever been useful to a family that still acted like you were optional, this one may sit close to your ribs. Tell me where you're listening from, settle in, and stay with me, because this is not a story about money first. It is a story about 6 years of locked doors, returned mail, Wednesday evenings nobody knew about, and the smallest brass thimble sitting at the bottom of a grocery bag, like proof that love can survive being mislabeled. Grandma Evelyn was the first person who taught me to read slowly. Not books exactly, though she loved books. She taught me to read people's receipts, hospital discharge papers, recipe cards, permission slips, the small print at the bottom of coupons, the tone in a voice when somebody said, "I'm fine," while gripping the counter. "Read the little lines, honey," she used to tell me. That's where people hide the truth. When I was 8, she gave me a cookie tin full of buttons and showed me how to sew one onto my school cardigan. She had a brass thimble she kept on her middle finger because she said needles had no respect for soft skin. It was scratched and dented, with tiny flowers pressed into the metal. I thought it was beautiful because she did not save it for special occasions. She used it. It had work marks. Our house was louder than Grandma's apartment. Natalie was 3 years older than me and could fill a doorway by standing in it. She was not evil as a child. I want to be fair about that. She was quick, funny, bright, and impossible to ignore. Teachers remembered her. Aunts bought her sparkly headbands. My parents repeated her jokes at dinner. When Natalie got mad, the whole house adjusted. When I got quiet, no one noticed until they needed me. "Elena, grab your father's reading glasses. Elena, help your sister find her shoes. Elena, stir the sauce while I take this call. Elena, you're so easy." That was supposed to be praise. At 10, I knew how my mother liked the towels folded. At 12, I knew which drawer held the insurance cards. At 14, I knew how to make Natalie's apology brownies after she slammed a door, and my mother said, "She's under a lot of pressure." I was not mature, I was useful. There is a difference, though it took me a long time to name it. Grandma saw me differently. At family dinners, while Natalie sat in the living room telling stories, I drifted to the kitchen because dishes gave my hands something to do. Grandma would stand beside me and dry plates with a flour sack towel. "You don't always have to earn your share," she said once. I remember the plate I was washing, white with a green rim. I remember the water going cold around my wrists. I shrugged because I was 15 and did not know how to receive something that honest. She did not push. Grandma rarely pushed. She just took the plate, dried it, and set it in the cabinet like the moment could wait for me to understand it. Years later, after college, I came home to Ohio and took a job at Heartland Community Credit Union. I started in member services, then moved into estates, because I was good at staying calm with grieving people. I could sit across from a son who had just lost his mother and explain why the account could not be accessed without letters testamentary. I could tell a widow which forms needed notarization without making her feel stupid. I could look at a trust certificate and know which page everyone was avoiding. My family heard credit union and decided I stamped papers. At Thanksgiving one year, Natalie was telling everyone about a marketing campaign she had managed for a boutique hotel group. My father beamed like she had rebuilt the city. Then Uncle Theo asked me what I did now. Estate settlement coordination, I said. Mostly deceased member accounts, beneficiary claims, trust verification, that kind of thing. Natalie lifted her wine glass. So, alphabetizing sadness. Everyone laughed except Grandma. I smiled because that was what I had learned to do. Keep the peace. Let Natalie be clever. Let my parents enjoy her. Grandma looked at me across the table. That sounds important, she said. Natalie rolled her eyes. Grandma, she's not arguing in court. She's putting stickers on folders. Grandma did not raise her voice. Some families would be better off if someone had put the right sticker on the right folder. That was Grandma. Plain, mild, sharper than people expected. Natalie did not like being corrected, especially by someone old enough to remember her bangs in 4th grade. She laughed it off, but she did not forget. Natalie collected small injuries like receipts she planned to cash later. At the time, I thought Grandma was only defending my job. I should have known then. The first real break happened after Grandma's fall. She was 82, living alone in a 2nd-floor apartment at Maple Glen Senior Residences. Not assisted living. Just a quiet brick building with elevators. A community room and planters by the entrance that always had either geraniums or dead brown stems, depending on the season. Grandma tripped on the edge of a rug and fractured her wrist. Nothing dramatic, but enough to scare everyone. Natalie lived 20 minutes away. I lived 45. My parents lived in Dayton and came up on weekends when guilt and weather allowed. Natalie stepped forward with the confidence of someone accepting applause. I'll coordinate things, she said in the hospital hallway. Grandma sat on the bed wearing a blue sling and a plastic bracelet with her birth date printed in black. I remember the bracelet because the nurse had written the time of discharge on the corner of Grandma's paperwork. 3:42 p.m. Natalie took the packet from the nurse before I could reach for it. I've got it, she said. I let her. That was my mistake, or one of them. At the time, it felt reasonable. Natalie was closer. She had a flexible schedule. She liked being in charge, and the rest of us had been trained to treat that like competence. For the first few weeks, everything seemed fine. I called Grandma every other evening. She complained about the sling, asked about work, and told me Natalie had reorganized her bathroom cabinet in a way that made no sense. She put the toothpaste in a basket, Grandma said. Like it's going somewhere. I laughed. Grandma laughed too, then lowered her voice. Your sister means well. That was an old family phrase. It meant someone had done something rude, controlling, or unnecessary, and we were all supposed to admire the intention. Then the calls got strange. One Sunday in March, I called Grandma after dinner. The phone rang once and went to a recorded message saying the number was not accepting calls. I tried again. Same message. I texted Natalie. Is Grandma's phone working? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. She's resting. Please don't call late. It confuses her. It was 7:18 p.m. I wrote back, just wanted to check on her. Natalie replied, I'm handling it. A few days later, Grandma called me from her own phone and sounded tired but normal. She said Natalie had changed some settings because spam callers were bothering her. I don't understand half of it, Grandma said. Everything has a password now. Do you want me to come look at it? I asked. There was a pause. No, she said. Not yet. That pause sat in the back of my mind. Over the next few months, I started getting more messages from Natalie than from Grandma. She's sleeping. She had a hard day. Doctor said less stimulation. Please respect boundaries. The words sounded responsible if you did not know Natalie. If you did, you could hear the lock clicking shut. I mailed Grandma a birthday card that June. It had a watercolor bird on the front. Because she liked birds she did not have to feed. I wrote 3 pages inside, telling her about my new apartment, the basil plant I had not killed yet, and a member at work who kept calling probate. I included 2 photos from a garden center because she loved seeing what other people bought, and then telling them they had overpaid. The card came back 11 days later, returned to sender. Wrong address. The address was not wrong. It was Grandma's address, written in my handwriting, with apartment 214 underlined twice in blue ink that was not mine. The words "wrong address" were written in Natalie's handwriting. I knew the way she made her lowercase g, like a loop that gave up halfway through. I put the envelope in a kitchen drawer. Then I took it out and put it in a folder. I did not know it yet, but that returned birthday card would become the first tab. My mother told me I was overreacting. "Natalie is doing a lot," Diane said when I called. I could hear the dishwasher running behind her. "You know how your sister gets when she feels unsupported." "I'm not trying to make her feel unsupported. I'm trying to talk to Grandma. Your grandmother is old, Elena. She gets overwhelmed. She didn't sound overwhelmed when I talked to her before." My mother sighed. "Not angry. Worse. Tired of me. Please don't make this another thing." Another thing. That meant a feeling of mine had become inconvenient. My father was less direct. He said, "I'm sure it'll settle down," which was Frank Wardle's way of putting a blanket over a small fire and hoping no one noticed the smoke. For almost a year I tried normal routes. Calls, texts, cards asking Natalie, asking my parents. Stopping by twice when I knew Grandma should be home. The first time, no one answered. The second time, a maintenance worker in the lobby said Mrs. Wardell had gone out with her granddaughter. "I'm her granddaughter," I said. He looked uncomfortable. "The other one, then." When I told Natalie I had stopped by, she called me within 3 minutes. "You cannot just appear at her building like that," she said. "I'm her family. You're upsetting her." "Did she say that?" Natalie's voice cooled. "Elena, guilt is not a caregiving plan." That one landed because it sounded like something an outsider might believe. I stopped arguing, not because I believed her, because I could feel the argument becoming a room Natalie had built for me. Every door led back to me being dramatic, jealous, guilty, or unstable. Then, on a Wednesday evening in October, my phone rang from a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer. I was standing in the frozen food aisle at Kroger, holding a bag of peas and trying to remember whether I had eaten lunch. "Elena Wardell?" a woman asked. "Yes, this is Alma Ruiz. I live across the hall from your grandmother at Maple Glen." I put the peas back without noticing. "Is she okay?" "She's okay tonight," Alma said. "But she asked me if I knew how to find your number. She says she keeps trying to call you and can't get through." I stood there with one hand on the freezer door handle, cold air spilling over my shoes. "She asked for me?" "She asks for you often." I did not answer right away. Alma's voice softened. "Honey, your grandma didn't forget you. Somebody just made it hard for you to reach her." I left my cart in the aisle. I drove to Maple Glen with my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my jaw. Alma met me in the lobby. She was in her 70s, small and straight-backed, wearing red reading glasses on a chain and a cardigan with embroidered violets. She did not ask me to explain myself. She only pressed the elevator button and said, "She made tea." Grandma was waiting in apartment 214 with 2 mugs on the table. Her hair was thinner. Her left hand had a tremor I did not remember. Her eyes filled when she saw me, but she did not cry. Grandma had never liked crying in doorways. "There you are," she said. That was all. I crossed the room and hugged her carefully. She smelled like lavender soap and the peppermint candies she kept in a covered dish by the couch. "I thought you didn't want me calling," I said, and hated how small my voice sounded. Grandma pulled back and looked at me. "Who told you that?" I did not want to say Natalie's name. Not yet. The apartment felt too quiet for it. She took my hand. "I thought you were tired of trying." We sat at her kitchen table for 2 hours, putting 6 months of missing pieces between us. Her phone had blocked my number twice. Natalie said she did not know how. Mail had gone missing. Natalie said the post office was unreliable. Family gatherings had happened without me because Natalie said I was busy or taking space. When Grandma asked my mother, Diane said, "You know how Elena is. She withdraws." I wrote nothing down that night. I just listened. Before I left, Alma knocked once and opened the door a crack. "All good?" she asked. Grandma smiled. "She's back." Alma looked at me for a long second. "Come Wednesdays," she said. "Natalie takes the girls to dance on Wednesdays." That was how the secret visits began. For 6 years, Wednesday evenings belonged to Grandma. I did not tell Natalie. I did not tell my parents. I told myself I was avoiding conflict for Grandma's sake, but that was only half true. The other half was harder to admit. I was tired of offering my love to people who kept turning it into evidence against me, so I showed up where I was wanted. I signed in at the Maple Glen lobby at 6:05 or 6:10 most Wednesdays, depending on traffic. The visitor log was a green binder on a metal stand beside the front desk. Date, name, apartment, time in, time out. Alma always noticed whether the pen worked. If it did not, she took one from her purse and said, "Institutions run on pens until they don't." Grandma and I made soup from cartons and leftovers. I picked up prescriptions from Whitman Pharmacy on Broad Street. I brought library books with large print and crossword puzzle books she pretended were too easy. I changed the batteries in her remote. I argued with her cable company. I sewed a button back onto her blue housecoat one November evening while she watched a baking show and criticized the pie crusts. The brass thimble sat beside the sewing tin. "You still use this?" I asked. "My finger still objects to being stabbed," she said. I slipped it onto my finger. It was too loose. Grandma watched me. "It'll fit when it needs to." That sounded like one of those grandma lines people pretend are magic after someone dies. At the time, she was mostly annoyed that I had chosen white thread instead of blue. Natalie's version of those years was different. According to her, I had moved on. I was too busy. I found old people depressing. I had unresolved resentment. I sent a few cards and then stopped. At Christmas gatherings I was not invited to, she told relatives I needed distance. At Easter, she said I was not in a good place. When Grandma asked why I never came to Sunday dinners anymore, Natalie said, "She doesn't like feeling judged." Grandma told me these things in pieces, never all at once. I think she was embarrassed, not of me, of them, of having been managed. One Wednesday, she handed me a church bulletin with a draft announcement tucked inside. It was for a fundraiser luncheon at which the pastor planned to honor longtime members. Natalie had filled out Grandma's family information. Children, Diane Wardell. Grandchildren, Natalie Briggs. There was a blank space after that. Grandma had circled it in pencil. "I told her she forgot you," Grandma said. "What did she say?" Grandma looked toward the window. The porch lights outside Maple Glen had clicked on early because of rain. She said she didn't want to confuse people. That sentence went into me quietly. No drama, no gasp, just a small internal shelf giving way. I took a photo of the paper on my phone. Grandma saw me do it. "Good," she said. After that, I started keeping records. Not because I planned revenge, I want that understood. I kept records because my work had taught me that memory becomes fragile when someone loud benefits from breaking it. I made a folder in my apartment labeled EW Visits. Inside it went pharmacy receipts, copies of returned envelopes, screenshots of call logs, appointment notes, and photos Grandma asked me to take of things Natalie had changed or removed. A red folder for medical, a blue folder for mail, a gray folder for family communications, a small manila envelope for things that felt too personal to label. I did not show Grandma every piece. She knew enough. Sometimes she would say, "Put that in your file," with a little edge in her voice. My job made me careful. I knew what looked like undue influence, and I knew what did not. I never asked Grandma about money. I never asked about her will. When she brought up the house, I changed the subject. When she complained that Natalie kept asking where she stored her jewelry appraisals, I said, "Do you want me to help you find a neutral professional?" "A lawyer?" Grandma asked. "If you want one," she smiled. "Your sister says lawyers make everything ugly." Sometimes people make things ugly, and lawyers write down what happened. Grandma laughed so hard she had to press a napkin to her mouth. 2 months later, she asked me to drive her to an appointment downtown. "Doctor?" I asked. "Paperwork," she said. I did not ask more. That was deliberate. I drove her to a brick office building with brass letters in the lobby directory. Hollis and Ibarra State Council was on the 4th floor. I rode up with her in the elevator, but when the doors opened, she touched my arm. "You wait downstairs." "Okay. I mean it, Elena. Not in the lobby. Downstairs." I looked at her. She was wearing her good gray coat and lipstick she had put on crooked. All right, I said. Her eyes softened. This is not because I don't trust you. I know. It is because I do. So I went back down and sat in the building lobby for an hour and 19 minutes, I know, because I kept the parking receipt. $7 paid at 2:14 p.m. I bought coffee from the cart near the elevators and spilled some on my sleeve. When Grandma came back down, she looked tired but peaceful. Do you need anything? I asked. A hamburger, she said. A real one. Not the kind your sister brings wrapped in lettuce. I took her to a diner with cracked red booths. She ate half a cheeseburger and 3 fries, then folded her napkin in a careful square. Don't fight them in the hallway, she said. I looked up. Let them choose a room with a table. I did not ask what she meant. I wanted to. I could feel the question at the back of my teeth. But Grandma had given me instructions by then, not invitations. There is a difference, and I had spent enough years around family pressure to recognize it. 6 months before she died, Grandma handed me a sealed cream envelope. We were at her kitchen table. Rain hit the window in little sideways lines. The brass thimble sat between us because I had been mending the torn pocket of her cardigan. Put this somewhere safe, she said. What is it? Something for later. Grandma. She gave me the look she used to give me when I tried to skip basting a hem. Elena. I took the envelope. My name was written across the front in Grandma's hand, slanted and firm. When do I open it? If they try to make you small in a room with a table. I almost smiled because it sounded so much like her and so little like any legal instruction I had ever heard. But her face did not change. So I said, okay. And don't explain too soon, she added. People who are still lying need room to finish. I put the envelope in the locked file box under my bed. After Grandma died, Natalie called my mother first. My mother called me 3 hours later. I was at work, reviewing a trust certification for a member whose son kept insisting his mother had basically promised him the account. My phone buzzed face down on my desk. Diane Wardell. I almost let it go. Something in me knew. Elena, she said when I answered. I stood up. Grandma had died at 7:40 that morning. Natalie had been there. My mother said it like that was proof of something. She went peacefully, Diane said. I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen until the numbers blurred. Was she asking for anyone? I asked. My mother paused too long. She was very tired. That was not an answer. I pressed my palm flat against my desk. When is the service? Natalie's handling arrangements. Of course she was. By 4 o'clock, I had no details, no funeral home name, no obituary link, no church information. I texted Natalie. Please send me the arrangements. She replied at 6:12 p.m. We'll let you know once everything is finalized. Please don't make this harder. The obituary posted the next morning. My name was not in it, not misspelled, not misplaced, gone. I read it 3 times at my kitchen table, with my coffee cooling beside me. Evelyn Margaret Wardell was survived by her daughter Diane, son-in-law Frank, granddaughter Natalie, grandson-in-law Brian, great-grandchildren Sophie and Lane, brother Theodore, and many beloved friends. Many beloved friends. I was not even a misplaced comma. Tessa found me in the break room staring at my phone. What happened? She asked. I handed it to her. Tessa, read the obituary. Her mouth tightened, but she did not do the thing people often do, where they rush to make your pain less awkward for themselves. She left you out, she said. Yes. Do you need me to cover your afternoon? I have the Henderson file. I'll take it. You don't know the Henderson file. Elena. I looked at her. She said, give me the file. That was Tessa. No speech, no performance. Just hands extended toward whatever was too heavy. At the funeral, after Natalie told the funeral director, I had a complicated relationship with the family. After my mother looked away, after the pastor misread the obituary exactly as printed, I stood in the receiving line because I could not make myself walk out. Mrs. Whitaker from Grandma's church hugged Natalie for a long time, then turned to me with polite confusion. I'm Elena, I said, Evelyn's granddaughter. Her eyes moved toward Natalie, then back to me. Oh, she said. I'm sorry. I didn't realize there were 2. Natalie heard. Of course she did. There used to be, she said lightly. A few people laughed because they thought they were supposed to. My face went hot, but I did not answer. I looked at the carpet instead, blue and gray, with a pattern of vines that did not connect. In the church basement afterward, there were ham rolls, fruit trays, coffee urns, and a framed photo of Grandma by a guest book. Natalie stood beside the photo accepting compliments. Brian moved around behind her carrying plates. My parents sat at a round table near the front with Uncle Theo. I went to the kitchen to ask where to put my coat because old habits are stubborn. A woman from the church handed me a stack of paper plates without looking at me. "Could you set these out?" I did. Halfway through, my mother came in. For 1 second, just one, she looked like my mother from when I was smalls and sick with a fever, worried, soft, almost brave. "I know you sent flowers that first Christmas," she said quietly. I froze with the plates in my hands. She looked toward the door, then back at me. "Your grandmother told me." I waited. My mother pressed her lips together. "But you still should tried harder, Elena." The plates bent in my grip. There it was, the almost moment. The little opening where she could have stepped through and chosen truth. Instead, she closed it herself and handed me the blame like a serving spoon. I set the plates on the counter. "I understand," I said. She looked relieved, which hurt more than anger would have. After the luncheon, Natalie found me near the coat rack. "I packed a few things for you," she said. She held out a plastic grocery bag from a store that had closed 2 years earlier. Inside were scraps from Grandma's sewing drawer, thread, dull scissors, loose buttons, a tomato pincushion with 3 needles stuck in it, and the brass thimble. "You can have that stuff," Natalie said. "It's about your speed." I looked into the bag. The thimble had fallen into the corner seam, dented side up. Natalie leaned closer. "Don't come to the will reading expecting drama." "When is it?" Her smile sharpened. "You'll get the notice like everyone else." I wanted to say, "You mean like I got the funeral notice?" Instead, I folded the bag over once and held it against my coat. Tessa was waiting outside by the curb with the passenger seat heater on. When I got in, she handed me a turkey sandwich wrapped in wax paper. "I guessed you didn't eat," she said. I looked at the sandwich, then out at the wet church steps. "That bag from Natalie," she asked. "Grandma's sewing things." Tessa did not ask if I was okay. I liked her for that. Halfway home, I reached into the bag and found the thimble. It was cold from being in Natalie's car. I held it in my palm the rest of the drive. The notice for the will reading came by email 2 days later. Hollis and Ibarra Estate Council. Conference Room 3, Thursday, 2 p.m. Please bring government-issued identification. Natalie sent a group text within the hour. Everyone should attend so there's transparency. Given some people's absence, I think Grandma would want clarity. She had added me to the group using my old work email instead of my phone number, then corrected it after Cousin Renee asked why my messages were bouncing. That detail stayed with me, too. She did not want me unreachable. She wanted me reachable in front of witnesses. I replied only, "I'll be there." No one liked the message. The morning of the will reading, I opened the locked file box under my bed. Inside were the folders I had built over 6 years. Red for medical, blue for mail, gray for family communications, manila for personal, and Grandma's sealed envelope. I sat on the floor beside the bed in my black dress and looked at my name in her handwriting. My thumb rested under the flap, but I did not open it. Not yet. I had already done what I needed to do. The week before, after the obituary posted, I had called Marisol Ibarra's office. I did not ask what was in Grandma's documents. I knew better. I said, "This is Elena Wardell. I believe my grandmother Evelyn Wardell was your client. I'm calling to confirm I received the notice." The receptionist put me on hold. Marisol came on the line herself. "Ms. Wardell," she said, "I'm sorry for your loss." Her voice was calm, professional, and not surprised. "Thank you. I understand Thursday may be difficult." "Yes. Please bring identification. And if you have anything Mrs. Wardell specifically instructed you to bring that as well." I closed my eyes. Understood. That was all she said. That was all I needed to hear. At work that morning, I made 3 copies of documents from my own folders. Not the whole file, just enough. Returned birthday envelope, pharmacy receipts. A printed screenshot of call restriction messages. Photos of the church bulletin draft. A copy of the Maple Glen visitor log pages Alma had helped me request from the front desk after Grandma died. Alma had done it with her lips pressed tight. They said family has to request these, she told the building manager. The manager looked at me. You are family? Before I could answer, Alma said, more than some. He gave me the pages. I saw my own name repeated down the log. Elena Wardell. Apartment 214, 6:07 p.m. Elena Wardell. Apartment 214, 6:03 p.m. Elena Wardell. Apartment 214, 6:12 p.m. Years of Wednesdays. Not every week. Life is not that neat. I got the flu once. Grandma was hospitalized twice. Natalie changed schedules a few times, and I stayed away when it would have upset Grandma. But there were enough lines to make a pattern no one could call accidental. I put those copies in a plain folder and placed it in my purse beside the sealed envelope and the brass thimble. Then I drove to the lawyer's office. Tessa offered to come in with me. I said no. Then I'll wait downstairs, she said. You don't have to, I know. She parked near a meter on High Street and walked with me to the lobby. I could smell coffee from the same cart where I had sat years earlier, while Grandma met Marisol alone. The building had changed the directory screen from brass letters to digital. But Hollis and Ibarra was still on the 4th floor. Tessa pressed the elevator button. You have eaten? She asked. Yes. Elena, I had toast. That is not an answer. It is technically food. She handed me a granola bar from her purse. Put it in your bag and lie to me later. I almost laughed. Upstairs, the receptionist asked my name and checked it against a list. Her finger paused only a fraction of a second. I wondered what Natalie had told her. Then she handed me a visitor sticker and said, Miss Ibarra is expecting you. Conference room 3 had frosted glass walls and a long walnut table. The chairs were black leather. There were water bottles on a tray, all labels facing the same direction. A box of tissues sat near the center, like an apology no one planned to use. Natalie was already there. Of course she was. She wore a cream blazer, gold earrings, and grief like a tailored coat. Brian sat to her right, shoulders hunched. My parents sat together near the far end. Diane had a tissue balled in one hand. Frank stared at the table. Uncle Theo leaned back with his arms crossed. Cousin Renee was whispering to her husband. Mrs. Whitaker from church sat near the wall, looking uncertain, and Alma Ruiz sat 2 seats from the door in her violet cardigan. Natalie clearly had not expected her. I saw it in the quick pinch between her eyebrows. Alma, Natalie said. I didn't realize you were coming. Alma folded her hands over her purse. Evelyn asked me to attend if invited. Natalie blinked. Invited by whom? Before Alma could answer, Marisol Ibarra entered. She was in her 50s, with silver threaded through dark hair, cut to her jaw. She carried a binder, not a stack. That told me something. People who bring too much paper often plan confusion. People who bring the right binder plan order. Good afternoon, she said. Thank you for being here. I'm Marisol Ibarra. I represented Mrs. Evelyn Wardell in her estate planning matters. Natalie sat straighter. I sat across from her, my purse at my feet. Marisol explained the process. She would summarize the will and trust. This was not court. This was not a debate. Questions could be addressed after the reading. Probate filings would happen according to Ohio procedure. She said all of this plainly. Natalie waited exactly 40 seconds after Marisol opened the binder. I just want to say something first, she said. Marisol looked at her. Mrs. Briggs, I'd prefer to begin with the document. It's relevant. Then it will likely still be relevant after I read. A small silence settled. Natalie smiled. Of course, but she was not used to being redirected, and it showed. Marisol began with Grandma's full legal name, date of execution, revocation of prior wills, and confirmation that the trust had been restated. Her voice was even. My family shifted in their chairs. Legal language makes people impatient when they think emotion should outrank it. Then Natalie interrupted again. I'm sorry, she said, not sorry at all. But before we go further, I think we need to acknowledge the situation. Diane closed her eyes. Marisol did not look annoyed. What situation is that? Natalie placed both hands flat on the table. My grandmother was vulnerable. There were people who were absent for years, who may now try to benefit from arrangements they had no part in. Everyone knew she meant me. I looked at the tray of water bottles. Natalie turned toward me fully. Elena, I don't know what you were told, or what you think you're entitled to, but Grandma needed people. Real people. Present people. You don't get to show up at the end and call it love. There it was again. The sentence she had polished enough to sound moral. My mother whispered, Natalie, not stop. Not that's not true. Just Natalie, like volume was the problem. Marisol's pen moved once on her notepad. Mrs. Briggs, she said, are you making a formal allegation? Natalie glanced at Brian. He gave a tiny shake of his head. She ignored it. I'm saying, Natalie said, that if this will suddenly favor someone who abandoned Grandma for 6 years, then yes, I have concerns. My father shifted in his chair. Alma looked down at her purse. I kept my hands in my lap. Natalie mistook my silence for fear. She always had. We all know why she's here, she said. She didn't sit through the doctor visits. She didn't take the late-night calls. She didn't handle the loneliness. She wants a check and a clean conscience. Cousin Renee stared at me with a mixture of pity and curiosity. Uncle Theo shook his head as if disappointed in a story he had not fact-checked. Marisol turned one page in her binder. Mrs. Wardell, she said to me, do you wish to respond before I continue? The room looked at me. I thought of Grandma at the diner, folding her napkin. Do not fight them in the hallway. Let them choose a room with a table. No, I said. Please continue. Natalie gave a tiny laugh through her nose, and that was her mistake. Marisol read the section naming the trustee. I nominate my granddaughter, Elena Margaret Wardell, to serve as trustee of the Evelyn M. Wardell Revocable Trust, and as personal representative of my estate, where applicable. The room changed temperature, not literally, but every person at that table seemed to inhale and forget to release it. Natalie's smile disappeared. My mother's tissue stopped moving in her hand. Marisol continued. In the event Elena Margaret Wardell is unable or unwilling to serve, I nominate Marisol Ibarra, attorney at law, as successor fiduciary. Natalie leaned forward. That can't be right. Marisol did not look up. I'm reading from the executed instrument. Grandma would never appoint Elena. I felt the sentence hit, but not as hard as it once would have. Marisol looked at Natalie over her glasses. Mrs. Wardell did. Natalie's hand went to her folder. Brian whispered, Nat. She shook him off. Marisol turned another page. After payment of lawful debts, expenses of administration, and specific charitable gifts listed in Schedule B, the residue of the trust estate shall be distributed to Elena Margaret Wardell. Uncle Theo sat forward. All of it? Marisol's eyes stayed on the page. The residue, yes. Natalie laughed once. It was not humor. It was shock looking for somewhere to stand. No, she said. No, absolute not. Diane looked at me then, really looked. For the first time in that room, my mother seemed less embarrassed by me than afraid of what I might know. Natalie opened her glossy black folder. I contest this, she said. Marisol closed the binder halfway. Mrs. Briggs, I advise you to listen to the remaining provisions before making any declaration. No, I contest it. On capacity, undue influence, fraud, whatever applies. Do you have counsel? I don't need counsel to say this is wrong. Brian touched her sleeve. Natalie, stop. She pulled her arm away. She manipulated Grandma. She must have. Grandma didn't even know Elena was alive half the time. Everyone here knows I was the one who stayed. Marisol became very still. That was when I noticed the folder, not Natalie's, Marisol's. A second folder, pale green, beneath the binder. It had a tab with my grandmother's initials, EMW, supporting memoranda. I had seen enough estate files to know what that meant. This was not just a will. Grandma had built a record around it. Marisol looked at Natalie. Mrs. Briggs, are you stating for the record that Elena Wardell had no meaningful contact with Mrs. Evelyn Wardell during the 6 years before her death? Natalie did not hesitate. Yes. The pen in Marisol's hand moved again. And you are stating that Mrs. Wardell lacked awareness of Elena Wardell's role in her life during that period? Yes. And you wish to challenge the estate plan on that basis? Yes. Marisol opened the binder again. Then I need to read Article 9 before you proceed further. Natalie pushed a page across the table. You can read whatever you want. This is my written objection. Brian closed his eyes. My mother, Natalie, maybe wait. Again, almost. Again, not enough. Marisol did not touch the page immediately. She said, for clarity, are you submitting this objection today? Yes, Natalie said. Against my advice to first hear Article 9, Natalie's face flushed. Are you threatening me? No, I am making a record. That phrase landed in me with professional familiarity. Making a record. It is one of the quietest, powerful things a person can do. Marisol took Natalie's page, placed it beside her binder, and read, any person who, directly or indirectly, contests, challenges, objects to, seeks to invalidate, or assists another in contesting any provision of this instrument, including any nomination of fiduciary or distribution of trust property, shall be deemed to have predeceased me for all purposes of any gift, distribution, benefit, nomination, or consideration under this estate plan. Natalie stared at her. Marisol continued. This provision applies regardless of whether the contest is framed as concern, correction, family fairness, capacity review, undue influence claim, or request for private settlement, unless such contest is brought in good faith upon probable cause as determined by a court of competent jurisdiction. The room was silent enough to hear the air system hum. Uncle Theo muttered, what does that mean? Marisol looked at him. It means Mrs. Wardell included a no-contest provision. Natalie's mouth opened. Marisol raised one hand slightly. Not dramatic, just enough. And before anyone responds, you should understand Mrs. Wardell anticipated the possibility of objections. She requested additional documentation regarding capacity, independence, family contact, and attempted interference. Natalie said, attempted interference. Her voice cracked on the second word. Marisol opened the pale green folder. My pulse moved into my throat. This was the part I had not known in full. I had records, I had my folders, I had Grandma's envelope, but I did not know what Grandma had told Marisol in private. Marisol removed one page. On May 17, 2021, Mrs. Wardell met with me alone. She stated that her granddaughter, Elena, had been visiting regularly and assisting with errands, household tasks, and practical needs. She further stated that certain family members were representing Elena as absent. Natalie said, that's hearsay. Marisol looked at her. This is not trial testimony. This is my file note from a client meeting. She removed another page. On July 8, 2022, Mrs. Wardell provided returned mail, call logs, and a written statement regarding her belief that communication between herself and Elena Wardell had been obstructed. My mother made a small sound. I did not look at her. Marisol removed another page. On January 12, 2023, Mrs. Wardell underwent a capacity assessment at her own request. The reviewing physician found her oriented, consistent, and able to explain the nature and consequences of her estate planning decisions. Natalie's hands curled around the edge of the table. This is insane, she said. Marisol turned to the next document. Mrs. Wardell also requested that Miss Alma Ruiz provide a statement regarding regular visits. Natalie turned toward Alma like she had forgotten she was there. Alma stood slowly. She did not look triumphant. She looked sad. Elena came on Wednesdays, Alma said, usually after 6. She brought groceries sometimes, medicine, library books. Your grandmother kept soup bowls for 2. Natalie shook her head. You don't know what you're talking about. Alma's chin lifted. I lived across the hall for 11 years. She was confused. No, Alma said. She was lonely. That is different. The sentence sat there. Mrs. Whitaker covered her mouth. Cousin Renee looked at the table. Frank's hand moved over his face, thumb and fingers pressing into his eyes. Marisol placed copies of visitor logs on the table. I recognized the green binder pages immediately. Elena Wardell, apartment 214, 6:07 p.m. Elena Wardell. Apartment 214, 6:11 p.m. Elena Wardell. Apartment 214, 6:04 p.m. Years of Wednesdays in black ink. Natalie stared as if the paper had betrayed her. You hid this, she said to me. I answered quietly. No, you didn't look. Her face twisted. You let everyone think. You told everyone what to think. I said. It was the first thing I had said to her since the reading began. The room seemed to lean toward it. Natalie reached for a water bottle, missed, and knocked it sideways. It rolled once, then stopped against Brian's folder. Marisol picked up Natalie's written objection. "Mrs. Briggs," she said, "I need to ask you directly. Having heard Article 9 and the supporting documentation, do you still wish this written objection to be treated as submitted?" Brian whispered, "No, Nat, say no." Diane looked at Natalie, then at me, then at Natalie again. For one breath, I thought my sister might stop. She had one small exit left, not from the truth, not from what she had done, but from making it worse in front of everyone. Natalie looked at me, and I saw the old calculation return. She still believed I would soften first. She still believed that if she pushed hard enough, the room would bend around her. "Yes," she said. Marisol held her gaze for a moment. Very well, Natalie's face changed, not all at once. First confusion, then fear, then the blood leaving her cheeks so quickly Brian stood halfway from his chair. "What does very well mean?" Natalie asked. Marisol placed the objection in the green folder. "It means your objection will be preserved and handled through the appropriate process. It also means you have been advised of the potential effect under Article 9. But I'm her granddaughter. So is Elena," Marisol said. Natalie looked at me like I had taken something from her. I thought of the obituary. The blank place where my name should have been. The church basement. The grocery bag. My mother saying, "You still should've tried harder." The 6 years of signing myself into a building where my grandmother waited with soup bowls for 2. Then I thought of Grandma in the diner. Let them choose a room with a table. Natalie had. Marisol continued with the remaining provisions. She read the charitable gifts Grandma had made to Maple Glen's Resident Assistance Fund, the church pantry, and the senior center sewing circle. She read a small conditional bequest to Natalie's children, protected separately and not controlled by Natalie. She read instructions for Grandma's house, her jewelry, her bishops, and her personal effects. There had been, I learned, a modest distribution for Natalie. Not equal, not what Natalie wanted, but something. Now it was in danger, because Natalie could not stop herself from being right in public. That was the part that made Uncle Theo sit back and swear under his breath. Natalie turned on him. "Don't." He raised both hands. I didn't say anything. "You were thinking it, Natalie," Brian said. "Please." She looked at him. "You knew." "No, you told me to stop. Because the lawyer told you to stop." Marisol closed the binder. "The formal probate and trust administration process will proceed from here. Miss Wardell, as nominated fiduciary, you'll receive a separate packet regarding acceptance of duties, bond waiver provisions, inventory timelines, and next steps, Ms. Wardell." Not Elena, the absent one, not Elena, the file girl. Ms. Wardell. It was strange what almost made me cry. Natalie pushed back from the table so abruptly her chair struck the wall. "This is disgusting," she said. "You all are going to let her do this?" No one answered. That was the first consequence, not the legal one, not yet. The first consequence was that Natalie looked around the room for the usual rescue and found people reading the papers in front of them. Diane's face had folded inward. Frank would not meet anyone's eyes. Cousin Rent embarrassed to have come, Mrs. Whitaker's expression had changed from confusion to something like sorrow. Natalie turned to my mother. "Mom." Diane's mouth moved once. "Natalie," she said. "Why didn't you tell us Elena was visiting?" Natalie stared at her. "Are you serious?" Diane looked at the visitor logs again. "I asked you," Diane said softly. "A few times. You said Elena didn't want to come." Natalie laughed in disbelief. "She didn't tell you either." I watched my mother flinch. There it was. The truth Diane did not want said plainly. She had not known everything, maybe, but she had known enough to ask. And when Natalie gave her the easier answer, she took it. My father finally spoke. "Nat, did you block the calls?" Natalie's eyes filled, fast and angry. "I was protecting Grandma. From Elena," he asked, "from stress." Alma sat down slowly. Evelyn cried on her birthday because she thought Elena forgot her. The room went still again. I looked at the table. Natalie said, "That's not fair." No one laughed. No one comforted her. Marisol began gathering papers. We're going to pause here. I'll meet separately with Miss Wardell to discuss fiduciary acceptance. Anyone wishing to retain counsel may do so. Natalie suddenly turned soft. It happened so quickly I almost admired the skill. Elena, she said. I looked at her. Her eyes were wet now, but not in the way they had been at the funeral. These tears were searching for an audience. We are sisters, she said. Don't let paperwork do this to us. Paperwork. After 6 years of weaponized absence, she wanted to blame the paper. I did not answer right away. Diane leaned toward me. Maybe we should all talk privately. There it was. The family's favorite second room, the private one. The one without witnesses, records, or consequences. No, I said. My mother's face crumpled. Elena, please. Just this once. Just this once. I had heard some version of that my whole life. Let Natalie have the front seat just this once. Don't correct your father just this once. Apologize first just this once. Help your sister, smooth this over, be bigger, be easier, be quiet, just this once. But there had never been just one. Natalie stepped closer. I made mistakes. Fine. Is that what you want to hear? No, what do you want? I looked at the green folder. Then at the visitor logs. Then at my sister, who had left me out of my grandmother's obituary, and still thought the problem was my reaction. I want Grandma's wishes followed. That estate should stay with the family. It will. Her mouth tightened. You know what I mean. Yes, I said. I do. Brian touched Natalie's shoulder again. This time she did not shake him off. She looked smaller, but not younger. There is a difference. Younger might have made me remember pigtails and shared cereal. And the time she climbed onto the garage roof and cried because she could not get down. Smaller only made me see how much space she had taken by force. Marisol asked me to stay behind. The others moved slowly. Chairs scraped. Water bottles were collected and abandoned. Mrs. Whitaker touched my arm as she passed. I'm sorry, she said. 2 words. No decoration. Thank you, I said. Alma waited by the door. Natalie stopped near her. You had no right. Alma looked up at my sister. Your grandmother asked me to tell the truth if you tried to bury it. Natalie recoiled as if slapped. Alma walked out. My parents lingered. Diane looked like she wanted to hug me, but she did not know whether she had permission. She did not. Frank opened his mouth, closed it, then said, We didn't know all of it. I believed him. That did not save him. No, I said. You didn't. His eyes reddened. Elena, I need to finish here. It was not cruel. It was a door closing quietly. After they left, Marisol and I sat across from each other in conference room 3. The room felt larger without my family's need filling it. Marisol slid a tissue box toward me without comment. I did not take one. She cared for you very much, she said. I looked at the green folder. Did she suffer over this? Marisol took a breath. Yes, that answer hurt, but I was grateful she did not soften it into something useless. She was also very clear, Marisol said. She wanted the record to show that her decision was not sudden, confused, or retaliatory. That was a word lawyers used when families wanted to reduce a person's final clarity to spite. She said Elena shows up without asking what things are worth, Marisol added. That was when I cried. Not loudly. Not in a way anyone downstairs would have heard. Just one hand over my mouth, one breath breaking badly, then another. Marisol waited. When I could speak, I said, She gave me an envelope. I know. I opened my purse and took it out. My name looked like Grandma's voice. Inside was one sheet of paper and a small photograph. The photograph was of Grandma's kitchen table. 2 soup bowls, 2 spoons, the brass thimble near the sewing tin. On the back, Grandma had written, Wednesdays. The paper was a letter. Not long. Grandma had never wasted words. My Elena, if they are reading things in a room with a table, then I am gone, and they have probably made you feel like an intruder. You were never an intruder in my life. I knew about the calls. I knew about the mail. I knew more than they thought I knew. I also knew you kept coming without making me choose between peace and truth. Do the job cleanly. Do not let them turn you mean. Keep the thimble if Natalie tosses it away. She never understood small, useful things. Love, Grandma, I read it twice. Marisol's turned her face slightly toward the window. I folded the letter along the same creases Grandma had made and put it back in the envelope. Downstairs, Tessa was waiting in the lobby, with 2 coffees and my granola bar untouched beside her. "How bad?" she asked. I looked at the elevator doors closing behind me. "Bad for them," I said. She handed me a coffee. "Good." Then she softened. "Bad for you too?" I nodded. She did not ask for details in the lobby. She walked me to the car, opened the passenger door, and waited while I sat down. The seat heater was already on. Over the next weeks, the consequences arrived without drama at first. That surprised me, though it should not have. Institutions rarely slam doors. They send letters. They set deadlines. They request signatures. They notify interested parties by certified mail. I accepted appointment as trustee and personal representative. Marisol guided the process, but she did not do the work for me. I gathered account statements, insurance documents, property tax records, utility bills, and household inventory. I opened an estate account. I paid Grandma's final medical invoices and the funeral balance Natalie had put on a credit card, expecting reimbursement with applause. Natalie retained an attorney for 12 days. Then, according to Marisol, her attorney advised her to withdraw her objection and seeks settlement. But the problem with reflexively striking a match in a dry room is that you do not get to complain when people smell smoke. The no contest issue had to be reviewed formally. Probable cause was discussed. Timing mattered. Natalie's prepared objection mattered. Her statements in the conference room mattered. The supporting documentation mattered. Grandma's capacity review mattered. The fact that Natalie had submitted the objection after being warned mattered a great deal. I did not celebrate any of that. I went to work. I answered emails. I ate toast over the sink. I slept badly. I woke at 3:20 a.m., more than once thinking of Grandma asking Alma for my phone number. Diane called 9 times the first week. I answered once. "Elena," she said, crying before I had said hello, "this has gone too far." "What has?" "All of it. The legal things. Natalie is devastated." I stood in my kitchen, looking at the basil plant I had finally learned to keep alive. "Grandma is dead," I said. My mother went quiet. I had not meant it as a weapon. It was just the fact everyone seemed to keep stepping around. "I know that," she whispered. "Do you? Elena, don't be cruel. I'm not. She's your sister. I know who she is," Diane cried harder. "Families make mistakes." I looked at the brass thimble on my counter. I had cleaned it with a soft cloth, but the dents remained. "Mom," I said, "did you ever ask Grandma directly if she wanted me gone?" Silence. "Did you?" She was old. "That's not an answer," my mother breathed shakily. "I didn't want to upset her." "No," I said, "you didn't want to upset Natalie." She said my name in that warning tone mothers use when they are losing authority and trying to dobro it from the past. I did not lend it to her. "I'm going to administer the estate as written," I said. "I'm not discussing Natalie with you again." "Elena." "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up. My hands shook afterward. Boundaries do not always feel strong when you set them. Sometimes they feel like standing barefoot on cold tile, wondering if you are becoming the person everyone accused you of being. Then Tessa texted, "Eat something that is not toast." I stared at the message and laughed for the first time in days. Natalie tried a different route. She sent a long email with the subject line "Family Healing." It began with Elena, "I hope you're proud of yourself," which told me the healing would be limited. She said Grandma had been confused. She said I had manipulated an old woman by sneaking around. She said she had blocked my calls during periods when Grandma was overwhelmed. She said the obituary was an oversight. She said if I cared about the family, I would agree to a private redistribution so we could all move forward. At the bottom, she wrote, "We are still blood." I forwarded it to Marisol and did not reply. 3 days later, Natalie left a voicemail. Her voice was different, so soft, wet, shaking. "Elena, please, I know I said things. I was grieving. You know how grief makes people. I can't lose everything over one emotional moment. One emotional moment." 6 years had become one moment in her mouth. I saved the voicemail, not because I needed more proof, because part of me still needed reminders. My father came to my apartment once. He did not call first. I saw him through the peephole holding his cap in both hands. I opened the door but left the chain on. He looked older than he had at the funeral. "Elena," he said, "can we talk for a few minutes?" His eyes moved to the chain. He swallowed. "I should've done more." I waited. "She called me once," he said. "Grandma?" He nodded. "Maybe 3 years ago, said she couldn't get you. She was upset." I gripped the door edge. "What did you do?" I called Natalie. "Of course." "And?" She said she'd handle it. The hallway light hummed overhead. My father's eyes filled. I wanted to believe that was enough. I looked at him, this quiet man who had spent his whole life letting stronger personalities make moral choices. For him. "Dad," I said, wanting to believe something is not the same as not knowing. He nodded as if I had handed him something heavy. "I'm sorry," he said. "I believed that too. But an apology can be real and still arrive too late to move back into the house it left." "I need time," I said. "How much?" "I don't know." He looked at the chain again, then nodded. "Okay." When I closed the door, I leaned my forehead against it until I heard the elevator take him away. The legal consequence became final months later. I will not pretend the process was cinematic. There were letters, filings, reviews, and one tense meeting where Natalie's attorney did most of the talking, while Natalie stared at me like I had personally invented estate law. In the end, the court did not rescue her from the choice she made after being warned. Grandma's clause held. Natalie's conditional share was treated as forfeited under the terms of the estate plan. Her children's protected gifts remained intact because Grandma had been careful. That mattered to me. Sophie and Lane had not blocked anyone's calls. They had not written anyone out of an obituary. Natalie lost money. But more than that, she lost the story. That was the consequence she felt first and loudest. Mrs. Whitaker stopped asking her to coordinate church memorial events. Cousin Renee called me one evening and said awkwardly, "I owe you an apology." Uncle Theo sent a card with 5 words inside. Evelyn knew what she was doing. I kept the card. Not because Uncle Theo mattered deeply to me, but because Grandma would have snorted at how long it took him. I did not become close with the extended family. That surprises some people when I tell the story. They expect a big reunion on the other side of truth, but truth does not automatically create closeness. Sometimes it only clears the smoke enough for you to see the distance accurately. The first time I unlocked Grandma's house as trustee, Tessa came with me. The house had been rented out for years while Grandma lived at Maple Glen, but she had kept ownership. A small white place on a corner lot with green shutters, a narrow kitchen, and a lilac bush by the back steps. Natalie had already told relatives she planned to restore it for family use, though she had never asked what Grandma wanted. The key stuck in the lock. Tessa stood behind me holding 2 coffees and a roll of contractor trash bags. "Want me to try?" she asked. "No." I jiggled the key once, twice, then felt the lock give. The air inside smelled like dust, old wood, and faintly of the lemon oil Grandma used on furniture. I stepped in and waited for the house to accuse me of something. It did not. It was just a house. There were sheets over the living room furniture. The kitchen floor had a crack near the sink. Someone had left a sponge hardened on the windowsill. I walked from room to room with a clipboard because work was easier than grief. In the kitchen, I opened my purse and took out the brass thimble. Tessa did not speak. I set it on the windowsill above the sink, where the afternoon light could touch it. For years, it had been an ordinary thing. Then it had been a scrap Natalie thought was small enough to throw at me. Standing in Grandma's kitchen, it became something else. Not a prize, not a trophy, just a small useful thing that had survived the wrong hands. Tessa placed 1 coffee beside me. "Where do you want the boxes?" she asked. That was love I could understand. Alma came later that afternoon with a covered dish and an envelope of photos she had found in Grandma's apartment after Natalie cleaned it too. Quickly. The dish was chicken and rice. The photos were mostly blurry because Grandma's hands had trembled near the end. There was one of me at the kitchen table in apartment 214, head bent over a crossword puzzle, while Grandma's hand pointed at a clue. On the back, Grandma had written, "Elena cheating at crossword Wednesday." She said you always denied it, Alma said. I was not cheating. I was researching. Alma smiled. That is what she said you would say. We ate chicken and rice at Grandma's old kitchen counter because the table was covered with documents. Tessa used paper towels as napkins. Alma complained that the salt was hiding. I found it in a cabinet beside expired tea bags. No one asked me what the house was worth. No one told me what Grandma would have wanted for their convenience. No one performed grief. After the estate settled enough for decisions, I kept the house through winter. I paid the taxes, repaired the roof, and donated Grandma's sewing supplies to the senior center, except for the brass thimble. I sent the church pantry the gift Grandma had written into the trust. I arranged for Maple Glen's resident fund to receive its distribution quietly, in Grandma's name. Natalie sent one final letter through her attorney asking for personal items of sentimental value. Marisol forwarded the request. I read the list: the silver tea set, the pearl earrings, the antique mirror, the cedar chest. Nothing from the sewing drawer. Nothing from the kitchen. Nothing with work marks. I approved the items Grandma had specifically designated and denied the rest, according to the trust inventory. Cleanly, no extra note. A week later, Natalie texted from a number I did not recognize. You always were cold. I looked at the message while standing in Grandma's kitchen, where the repaired faucet no longer dripped. Then I blocked the number, not angrily, just completely. The final time I saw Natalie in person was outside the courthouse after a procedural hearing. She was wearing sunglasses, though the sky was cloudy. Diane stood beside her. Frank was not there. Natalie waited until my attorney stepped away to take a call. "Elena," she said. I stopped because I wanted it finished, not because she deserved more of me. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red. "I hope it was worth it," she said. I looked at my sister, this woman who had spent 6 years telling people I had abandoned our grandmother, who had left me out of printed memory, who had called theft protection and cruelty grief. Then I thought of soup bowls for 2. I thought of Grandma's handwriting. I thought of the visitor log, line after line, my name written by my own hand. Natalie's cruel sentence came back to me one last time. You don't get to show up at the end and call it love. I said, I didn't show up at the end, Natalie. I showed up when no one was watching. Her face changed, but I did not stay to study it. I walked to my car. Tessa had left a paper bag on the passenger seat with a sandwich inside and a sticky note that said, "Not toast." That is where the story really ends for me. Not with Natalie going white in a lawyer's office, though she did. Not with the legal clause doing what Grandma designed it to do, though it did. Not with relatives finally realizing they had repeated a lie because it came from the loudest person in the room. It ends in a quiet kitchen with a dented brass thimble on the windowsill, a repaired faucet, and 2 people who knew where the boxes went without asking what they could take. I still miss Grandma. Some mornings, grief is practical. It shows up when I fold a dish towel the way she taught me, or read the fine print on a form and hear her voice saying, "That's where they hide the truth." Some evenings it is less practical. It is just an empty chair, but I do not miss begging my family to remember me correctly. I do not miss explaining that I tried. I do not miss handing people proof of my heart and watching them search it for flaws. Diane sends cards on my birthday now. I read them once, then put them in a drawer. Frank leaves short voicemails sometimes. I save a few and delete others. I do not hate them. I also do not arrange my life around the hope that they will become brave in time to matter. Natalie and I do not speak. Her children will receive what Grandma protected for them when the time comes. I made sure of that because the document said so, and because I refuse to punish children for adult hunger. As for Grandma's estate, I did the job cleanly, just like she asked. The house is not restored for family use. I did not turn it into a shrine. I live there now, at least for this season of my life. The lilac bush came back in spring. Alma visits on Wednesdays when she can. Tessa has a key because she once drove me to a funeral and never asked me to be so sad than I was. The brass thimble still sits on the windowsill. Sometimes people who come over ask about it. I tell them it belonged to my grandmother. That is enough. That's my story. A brass thimble, 6 years of Wednesdays, and a kitchen where no one has to earn their chair. If someone in your life only values you when you are useful, take this as your sign to stop confusing exhaustion with love. You do not have to scream to be finished. You do not have to prove forever what someone else benefits from denying. Sometimes the cleanest answer is to let the record stand, lock the door gently, and build your life with the people who knew your name before there was anything to inherit. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. And if you have your own quiet truth you're still carrying, I hope you keep it safe until the right room, the right table, and the right moment.